This tape falls into the category of materials that are not meant to be an end in itself. It's something of a progress report on an attempt to understand the mindset at work in the alliance between RFK Jr. and Trump in office in D.C. The illegitimate mindset. If someone had told me when I was investigating Mount Desert Island that our society would refuse to acknowledge what it meant, evaluate the evidence, and in favor of hiding their refusal to recognize what happened behind the various shames of the sexual revolution, I would not have believed it. I've discussed with the coming of Martin Luther King celebration of his birthday this 2026, coming this Monday, elsewhere, the way his legacy is presented as resistance to segregation, so that they can leapfrog over his leadership in the anti-war movement and depict it as a red carpet to the Obama mentality. This leapfrog act is part of the mentality of hotwiring our legacy to hide certain things. And what it gives rise to is the idea that some of us will survive and they will be representative sample of what we strive to bring about through equity. An arc, in other words, as Robert Kennedy has spoken of openly, which involves genocidal extermination. And you get some pictures in passing of what all that means in terms of the mentality, the illegitimate mentality that operated the control tower that brought this about. The idea that you're protecting the future for the children by subjecting them to the sight of genocidal practices is one very difficult paradox that's certainly in play, even though it's abhorrent, I think, pretty clearly and obviously. So, another illegitimate mentality that gets constructed around what has been done, is being done, pertains to the idea that the people in charge of evaluating, the supervisors of rightness and proper conduct, are the powerful people in charge of administration, when they, of course, were behind the attack on the Capitol, the subversion of children's proper upbringing with the trafficking situation that is so obnoxious. People don't talk about it. And some of it comes down to the idea of First Amendment rights in Hollywood, that people are supposed to be able to know the difference between what's allowed in speech and expression in entertainment and what isn't. allowed in reality, so that when Mel Gibson dresses up as a villain and tortures or murders harmless people. I don't know if he's ever done that in the movie. Maybe he doesn't allow his villainy to be seen. You're supposed to say, oh, well, it's only a movie. That used to even be a refrain for Last House on the Left while they were staging a real world Last House on the Left. The group contracted to Mancine, signifying Manson cinema, in which I was waylaid and tortured as a child, which you're not allowed to admit. And of course, one of the great effort went into the arts community and the Biden administration's revolting goading of me as a performing artist for adult cinema in secret so that Yoko Ono could make these secret tapes. They came out in sex lies and videotapes. Peter Gabriel's, the various homicidal antics of her espionage warlord Amanda Harcourt, and all of the lies told by Pittsburgh's union. And it's supposed to be to prove that Jimmy was just having normal intercourse with his girlfriend. But he needed some sort of special therapy and attention. So they made him into a list, a sort of Taliban list, a pussy ball list of moral assassinations that add up, so they could sell the idea of J. Edgar Hoover's surveillance of Martin Luther King is justified, and according to their script, his murder as poetic justice. Now, of course, it's much easier for Seattle to say torturing Jimmy into intractable conditions like Parkinson's, with all of the complications and difficulties involved in living with that and diabetes as a deaf man. Dry eye, UTI, maybe returning, that sort of thing. It's poetic justice because they come from a charm school that sees AIDS as Aaron Bushnell martyrdom, a supernova. I mean, UW Dialectical is really pretty rotten and crank. So they don't go by the text script. They say they're throwing the book at me, doing it by the word of the text, but that's not true. They're not going to come out and say, we admit that we adopted the murder of Martin Luther King as poetic justice because of Henry Wade's grinding acts against Marilyn Monroe and Kennedy. They're not going to say that, but that's what they did. That's what they're stating under the table when they say that it's poetic justice to subject the persona to successive degradations of the X motive and then subsume it into a larger structure dominated by what do they think it is. Hell in this world will save you from hell in the hereafter. I guess that's what some AIDS is mercy. Mercy Hospital says this in their code switching enterprise of ripper murdering people for the copyright. This is the mentality that's supposedly so legitimate that one can only be in a state of revelation. Oh, the beautiful children that were burned alive went to heaven. We had no responsibility for this because Bobby Kennedy is in love with Bitcoin. I mean, this isn't an end in itself because it needs to be worked on and fleshed out. And there's a lot of things I'm overlooking and leaving out, but I'm trying to make some progress on describing the illegitimate mentality that we're being told to accept.